Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kimberly Bryant, and I'm the Director of Client Services at Coleman Insights. And here with me are Jay Nachlis and Meghan Campbell, consultants at Coleman Insights. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's episode of Ask Me Anything, our webinar series, where we will answer your questions related to research, branding, and marketing strategy in audio entertainment. Today's AMA will be covering music testing. Now, we did receive a number of great questions from your registration forms that we will be answering today, but we will also be addressing some of the most common questions that we are asked whenever we discuss music testing with our clients. So, but please feel free also to use the chat feature and answer any questions that may pop up as we're talking, or if you have additional questions. And as long as we have time, we will try and address those at the end. All right. Well, let's get started. So, Jay, I'm going to ask you our first one, our most common question. Why is conducting perceptual research before a music test so valuable?
Yeah, we definitely get that question a lot. With the caveat that it's not always feasible to do, it is definitely the optimal way to go because it provides a roadmap for your music testing strategy. The music test, ultimately you can test anything you want, right? But it shouldn't be about just trying to get songs that test. So let me just give you an example of a format, right? Take a classic hit station, and you may be playing a lot of 80s music. But what a perceptual would tell you is what's, for example, the right balance of eras. Should we be evolving out of the 70s or even the 60s? Should we be evolving more into the 90s or even the 2000s? What's the percentage of each of those to test? So you could end up testing a lot more of one era than you should be testing based on that strategy. After eras, you can also learn about sound codes and texture. So, what does the audience or the market, for example, feel about 80s hair? Maybe they hate that. Maybe that shouldn't be part of your music test as a classic hit station. What about pop rock versus pop? So you could end up, without that strategic roadmap, you could end up testing, again, a balance of one instead of another, or missing an opportunity to test more of a certain sound. It can also help, or perceptual can help with your screener. So you'll know, for example, what's the right percentage of gender? Should I be testing, this male versus female? What about, you're probably going to be testing more often than not 100% of your cume, but what about P1s? And how many P1s should I let in from the other stations, for example? What about age range? Am I testing the right age range? So all of these things really help inform that strategy of a music test rather than just guessing and saying, well, yeah, we're mainly an 80s station, so I'm just going to go out and try and find all these songs that test. It drills it down so that you've got the confidence to have a really good test list.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, Meghan, my next question is for you. Tell us about fit and compatibility. What are they and why do they actually matter?
Well, there are two additional metrics that we provide in our Factory 60s at Coleman Insights, on top of the familiarity and acceptance scores or appeal and burn. And we ask fit to determine how strongly each song in your test is associated with your station and its competitors. So ideally, your radio station would be playing a high percentage of songs that test really well. They're very popular among your target audience, and they also fit your station's brand. So it has a really high fit score. So when you get your results back from your music test and you're sorting songs into categories, you should aim to populate those categories with songs that are highly popular and give you a strong fit score and fit your brand. The less it fits your brand, the more selective you should be. So as you make song selections, you may decide to avoid songs with lower fit scores, even though they are very popular. Essentially, fit helps you manage the degree to which you expose your audience to songs that are outside of their expectations, outside of your brand. Compatibility is another metric that we use in Factory 60s, and our analysis identifies 3 song clusters that represent a music style. So These are 3 songs that all test very similarly. If you love one of these songs, you'll love the other 2 as well in that cluster. And after the clusters are identified by our computer program, our music team labels each cluster. For example, if you have a cluster that starts with "You Give Love a Bad Name" by Bon Jovi, you may also see "Here I Go Again" by Whitesnake in there, and "Pour Some Sugar on Me" by Def Leppard, and we'll probably slap the name '80s Hair on that. And there could be anywhere from 10 to 20 different clusters identified by our program representing different music styles. And our compatibility analysis produces scores indicating how compatible each song in your test is with those that are most strategically important appetites. So if you're a classic rock station and you have learned from your strategic study with Jay that your core sounds should be 70s classic rock and 80s classic rock, but you know you're also playing into the 60s and you're playing into the 90s a bit, you'll want to make sure that those fringe songs are compatible with those core songs or sounds. So if you're playing a Nirvana song and it's not highly compatible with 70s classic rock and you know that's your core style, you may want to find a song that's in the same vein but is compatible with a core style. So essentially, compatibility helps to optimize the cohesion of your music mix, make sure all of your sounds go together well.
Yeah. All right, Jay. So this is a common question, and to reiterate that we also received it on registration forms. How do you select which songs to test?
Yeah, you know, some of this is a bit duplicative of what Meghan just said and some of the stuff that I answered in the first question. But it's about being highly strategic about which songs you're picking, because you can get songs to test that you shouldn't necessarily play.
Mhm.
So, you know, that it shouldn't be just that with the strategy. So first of all, it is helpful to consider what songs have tested well for others in your format. And that's, you know, that's insight that we do provide. That's one of the things, for example, when we do a pre-test analysis for our clients, we take a look at previous studies, recent studies in their format to give you an idea of songs that you should consider, or maybe not consider, songs that have tested poorly in your format to consider taking out. So that's one thing. Another is, again, balancing based on the strategy. You know, if you're a 90s hip hop station or a classic hip hop station that's centered in 90s hip hop, and you should be testing a lot of 90s hip hop. And don't go on this experimenting fishing expedition into different sounds that aren't strategically important for your radio station. You know, I'll give you this analogy outside of music for a second, but you know, let's say you're a sports talk station and you've got this show on that's really known for baseball talk, right? And they know their baseball stuff and people come to them for baseball talk. And so that allows them to go deeper into baseball talk. They can get into the weeds because people know that that's what their image is. But then one day, out of the blue, even though there's no hockey team in town, they start, and that's not what they're known for, they just start talking about hockey and they get really deep in the weeds about hockey. Do you think they'll keep that audience, or do you think the audience will go away because they're not centered on baseball or because they've gone too deep on hockey? It's really the same thing. So you can go deeper on your strategic sounds when selecting songs for a music study, and you should go shallow on the ones that are not as strategic. And when I say deeper, I'm not talking about going out and finding, you know, deep tracks that are going to be unfamiliar to everybody. I'm just saying you can go a little farther into the strategically important sounds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Meghan, bringing it back to you. Let's talk about sound coding. Question we received here. Why is accurate sound coding essential for a successful music test?
Well, it's essential for good research, period, honestly. Every single song in the Coleman Insights Music Library has a sound code, and it's not static. How a song is coded can have really big implications. So we put a lot of thought into how they're coded. We have a team of musicologists here that look at era, music, style, and texture. And determine the sound code based on that, along with other information about the client station. You know, a hot AC station may see a song as being AC, where a mainstream AC may see it as pop. And, again, if you've come out of a strategic study and your strategy indicates you should play a much higher percentage of AC than pop, it's really important that those codes are done very, very well, so that you are very clear and you can execute your music strategy well. It's also really important to compatibility of analysis, which I just talked about. We offer station monitoring with all of our different projects, and it's really important in all of those tools as well.
Yeah. All right, we got a really interesting question here. How does Oldies and Classic Hits get the right male-female balance? And is there a special challenge to selecting the right ballads?
I think we've touched on a lot of these answers already
today.
But that is a great question, and I know it's one that many clients struggle with. Ideally, you'd be armed with a strategic plan, audience data from your strategic study that can guide you in that direction as to how many men and women you should include in your sample, and also in what scores you may want to lean into during the analysis. But in the absence of strategic information, you can of course lean in. You can use Nielsen data if you have access to it, and you can also use what you know about your market and your competitors. If you're a classic hit station that competes with a high-performing classic rock station that's dominant among men, you may want to lean into the female audience a little bit more to give you a competitive advantage there. Every market has a different competitive landscape, so use the tools you have to make those decisions. But whatever research company you partner with for your music testing should also be able to help guide you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you, Jay and Meghan. And thank you everyone else for joining us for today's episode. Now, if you asked a question that we didn't get a chance to address, or if you even have follow-up questions, please feel free to contact Jay and Meghan directly. I've added their email address to the chat if you take a look now. But if you happen to have a good ear, it's Jay Nachlis at Coleman Insights and Meghan Campbell at ColemanInsights.com. But keep an eye on our website and our social media for information about our next AMA. And if you aren't already subscribed, make sure you go and subscribe to our Tuesdays with Coleman blog on our website. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.